heard a story on early this week, and that was about an auction that was held and where the hammer was brought down by the auctioneer and sold. And at that point, somebody, a bidder, a registered bidder, said, oh, and they wanted to make a bid. It was after the fall of the hammer. Now, what happened in this, and I wasn't there. I don't know the exact, not first-hand information, obviously, on this. This is what I'm being told, is that discussion between the possible bidder, the vendor, the agent, the auctioneer, they reopened the auction and kept going. Now, the hammer had fallen. The auctioneer had called sold. So let's go back and have a look at now it's sold for $100,000 more than what it was. The hammer was brought down on. It was not to the previous successful bidder. It was to the person who had made the bid. From what the story goes, is after the fall of the hammer the first time, we have a very, very unhappy underbidder. So who is now making a lot of noise about the fact that they missed out and they shouldn't have missed out. So obviously there's a lot of discussions to be had around this story. But let's go back to the legislation, because this is where every good discussion about this should start. And we look at the Property and Stock Agents regulations and clause 15 in there. And if we look at that in section 1, it looks at the prescribed conditions applicable to the sale of a property at auction. Okay, now they're actually the prescribed provisions for livestock as well, but we're only just talking about land at this stage, or a property. Now, if we look at clause D and clause G under this, we'll actually look at G first. A bid cannot be made or accepted after the fall of the hammer. And I mean, sometimes it's split second close. But if the hammer or the contract or whatever that auctioneer is using as their hammer is come down, it's been called 3 times, and it's sold, the hammer's down. It's after the fall of the hammer. So now if that becomes a disputed bid, no, I got in before you said sold. I was saying it as you said sold. And obviously that's the argument around this point. Now at that point, we go back to clause 1 part D, and it says in the event of a disputed bid, the auctioneer is the sole arbitrator and the auctioneer's decision is final. So it's not what the vendor's saying, it's not what the agent is saying and encouraging the auctioneer to do, it's not what the possible purchaser or the new bidder or the old bidder are saying. So it's about, if the auctioneer says, no, the hammer was down before the bid came in, that's how it stands. So if there was an error there, then there needs to be, a statement about that. But in terms of how this will pan out for that specific situation, and it's not an unusual one. I've spoken to a number of auctioneers this week about it, and they've all said so frequently, purchasers play that game of holding on to the last second and holding on and holding on and holding on, and then almost doing it, and then they miss it. Or they don't believe they've missed it. They've got it in at the same time. So there's always that argument. And you see auctioneers out there and you think, oh, they're taking forever. And particularly when you're there as a buyer or on behalf of a buyer, if you're a buyer's agent or assisting a person to purchase at a property, you feel as if that's 10 hours whilst you're waiting for the fall of that hammer to come. But you see many very experienced auctioneers will say, have you finished? Have you finished? Have you finished bidding? I am calling this property. It is going to be sold. And you think, if you're the buyer, it's come on. And then, at that point, you've given every opportunity for people to bid. And then then many auctioneers will stop in between the second call and the third call and the sold to actually make that happen. But again, let's go back to the legislation. A bid cannot be made or accepted after the fall of the hammer, and the auctioneer is the sole arbitrator and the auctioneer's decision is final. So they're the 2 things to remember out of that story. If you are selling property by auction, if you are the auctioneer at a property, just be aware of what's going on there and maybe take those extra couple of minutes to make sure that everybody is out and ready out of the auction and making it happen. Because there can be that split second and, tensions are high and people are nervous and, it's just about how that happens.